What's going on, everybody? This is Tim Stainrod again with Lighted Up Sports. Today we have a special guest host, my boy CJ. What's going on, CJ?
What's going on, everybody?
CJ is gonna provide some insight today, give a few extra points, back up anything I have to say, or give his own points, and I'll back up anything he has to say. So we're gonna work off of each other today. My boy, iron sharpens iron, right?
My guy.
That's it. All right, today our special guest is Will Schwarstien. How you doing, Will?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you having me out. It's good to come out and talk about my story. It's been a while, so I'm glad to be able to pass it on to other people.
Of course.
That's
of course.
what it is.
Will is a native Norwalker. You graduated from what school?
Graduated from Norwalk High way back in 2002.
2000.
Okay.
Yeah, seems like forever ago, but here we are.
Hey, man. I couldn't have told, honestly. You look good for your age, but
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No doubt. So, Will, what we're going to be doing is talking about Will's story. He is a former or current athlete. Where are you?
I mean, I still play, but I'd say I'm a retired pro athlete, and now I just kind of play for the fun of it now. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, well, tell me about your story, man. We're going to start up middle school. Tell me about how you got started in sports.
So I've been playing basketball for as long as I can remember, really. But, when I was younger, I was really a two-sport athlete. I played baseball half of the year and basketball the other half of the year. Okay. And, during middle school, I'd say is really when I started coming into my own as an athlete, and sports kind of took over my life wholeheartedly. School kind of was a secondary thing. And, I mean, I'm sure most athletes kind of feel that same way.
Yeah.
And, basketball was sort of a pastime of mine I really enjoyed. I liked playing with all my friends and the neighborhood kids and all that. And then baseball was my other thing. I just was kind of a naturally pretty good player at it. So just kind of stuck with those as my two sports. Most of my friends played them too. So I just kind of went that route, and then got into high school. And that's when things kind of changed for, I guess you could say, the better. I went from being, I'd say, mostly a baseball guy and basketball kind of secondary to my freshman year of high school. I played both sports. Did pretty decent on the freshman team for basketball, but nothing too over the top, no crazy stats or anything like that. Just, a key player on the team. And then came baseball season, and I thought that's really where I was going to shine. And I guess you could say it went the opposite way. I had kind of a bad performance playing. The coach and I kind of butted heads a little bit, and things just didn't go as well as they should have. So it kind of sealed the deal where baseball was no longer going to be my forte, and basketball kind of took over my life from there. I was consumed by it. So
those are those meant to be things, like certain things play out for a reason.
Exactly. At the time, it was one of those things you didn't really know what it was going to lead to. It was like, all right, well, my favorite sport's now gone, but at least I got this one. And being a tall guy my whole life, everyone always is like, oh, you must play basketball. You must play basketball. So it kind of was like, well, I might as well live up to the standard what everybody thinks anyway.
I was just going to ask you that question. Like, did you have a growth spurt at a certain age, or have you always been tall?
I've always been tall. I was always one of the tallest guys in my class, but I'd say I was just slightly taller than everybody going into high school. And then really between 8th and 9th grade, I think it was like a 6-inch growth spurt, and then between 9th and 10th grade, I had another like 4 or 5-inch growth spurt. So I really shot up above people.
Right. How tall are you?
Just under 6'10". So, and it's funny because my dad's only like 6'3", my mom's about 5'9". So you look, and there's myself, and I got 2 brothers, and the 3 of us are all 6'10".
So where did that come from? Like,
I couldn't tell you. I really don't know, but
grandparents, uncles,
right?
It's funny, you look at our grandparents, and they're not really all that tall or anything either. So we really don't know where this height magically came from. I guess you could say my mom was sneaking miracle growing our food or something. I don't really know. It just panned out that way, and worked out for the better.
I wish I was taller, man. I tell you.
Same, man.
But all right, that's a great story. Yeah. So sticking with your younger years, let me just get a brief background. Like you said, you've always had an interest in ball, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think the first time I picked up a ball and really kind of started playing was when I was maybe like kindergarten age, 4th grade, 4 years old, something like that. So I mean, I remember being young. I grew up in the Wolf Pit area, and I remember going down to the Wolf Pit's outdoor courts and playing with my dad and playing with the neighborhood kids. And I mean, I remember times where I didn't even know what basketball really was. I was just running back and forth with the ball up and down, throwing the ball at the rim and hoping it went in. But that was really where it started, and the interest just grew from there.
So did you have any? Well, I'll let you actually remember the Calvin Murphy and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. So being from Norwalk, were there any names that you knew growing up, like Calvin Murphy or anybody?
If you're from Norwalk and don't know about Calvin Murphy,
Right.
you're not from Norwalk.
Right,
So
right.
It's one of those things. He was just a staple name. Like growing up, if you played ball at all, you knew who Calvin Murphy was. You saw him around town quite a bit. I mean, for as long as I can remember, he's always been in the Memorial Day parade here. He's been, showing up at Norwalk High randomly to just kind of pop in and say hello. I've seen him out in Stop and Shop and things like that. So you never know where you're going to bump into him. But besides him, there's a lot of local guys that we looked up to and guys that you knew from the neighborhood that just were playing, and you just wanted to be like them and be on the court playing all the time. They always had a good time. And even when it got aggressive and rough out there, everybody still was cool at the end, and that's what made it worthwhile. The friendships and stuff make it worth it.
That's
so.
ball. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
At least. But I know because you're a little older than us. So as far as, do you have any ball players of that, like from that year, or like people that you grew up with around that time that are maybe parents of like us now, or or at least big brothers or sisters to us? Like, do you have any players that you used to ball with?
Man, I honestly can't even remember a lot of the names. Like, I feel like it was that long ago when I was so young playing. But growing up, Calf Pasture Beach used to always be flooded with guys playing. Vets Park, you could always find guys outside playing, which is one of the sad things about today. Is I drive around town, and if you see one court open with guys playing, it's like, wow, a miracle. Guys don't want to play outside anymore.
They're not playing outside.
The street ball game in Norwalk, at least, has kind of faded a little bit, and I'd like to see that make a little bit more of a resurgence, because in my mind, that's where I learned how to play. You played at Vets Park, and you couldn't cry about stuff down there. If a guy who was older, bigger, whatever it may be, kind of beat up on you, you just had to take it, or you weren't going to play anymore. So,
did they have leagues back then? You saw a few leagues?
Yeah, we had some leagues, but actually, that's a good question. Now, did you play in any leagues growing up, like other than like the biddy?
When I was younger, I played in the biddy leagues and all that. JVA for a year before I got into high school. But I remember when I was younger, they had, I can't remember what the name of the league was. But they
was it
over
Goodfellas?
Here at Ben Lee at Ben Franklin.
Franklin?
It was like the adult league. But man, it used to be what I would consider a rival to like a Rucker Park league. All the local legends around here, all the juniors and seniors in high school who kind of were of that caliber of play, they were able to play in the league, but you almost had to be hand selected if you were in high school to go play in this. And you showed up and Ben Franklin was packed. I remember going days where you couldn't even get in the gym because everyone was there watching. It was Saturdays and Sundays. That's where you went. If you didn't have nothing to do in town, you went to go watch the guys ball, and it was, like I said, a Rucker Park sort of atmosphere for Norwalk. And we saw some really great talent, some really great games, and always a fun day.
This is one dynamic that I'm enjoying about this interview so far, is that you're our oldest guest, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
It's true, and you're giving a perspective of Norwalk that we haven't gotten yet.
Yeah.
Jarrell, our second guest on the show, he was a little older than us, but maybe just under 30.
Yeah, Jarrell's a couple years younger than myself. I know him for a long time. We played.
Shout out Jarrell, man.
Yeah, shout out to my man Jarrell. We've known each other for a long time, and really we know each other from playing ball and going to school together. But I'd say mostly our friendship comes from playing basketball together. And we've been lucky enough to play on teams together. We played against each other at times, and he's a good kid. He's a couple years younger than myself, so he definitely has a little different perspective. But it's interesting to see how each one of us kind of has our own take on what basketball in Norwalk's been and how we got to where we got.
Right.
It's been such a drastic change in the city too. Like, since we're on Norwalk, let's talk about it, because how do you feel? And this is actually off topic, but it's a podcast. This is what happens. How do you feel about all the changes happening, especially down the street? We have a mall that's being built. Which personally, the only thing I see is traffic. That's what I see. How do you feel about it?
Traffic definitely going to pick up a lot with that mall, but it's funny because for 20-something years, that place has just been vacant. Nobody knew what that was going to be. I remember way back in the day, in that area is where Connecticut Limo used to be.
Yep.
Since then, the dump used to be down there. It was way different.
Didn't they have an airplane, not airplane, but an airport type of loading dock or something like years ago. Like remember there was a
I
gas
don't
station?
remember that, but I mean, there very well could have been. If so, I just don't really
Could've,
remember it.
yeah.
But I mean, one of the big things I remember as a change from Norwalk is when I was a kid, Calfasher Beach was not like it is now. Like Calfasher Beach was not where you went. It was literally ran by gangbangers, drug dealers, party goers. Like you couldn't walk on the beach because you didn't know what you were going to step on. You literally weren't allowed in the water for I don't even know, probably until I was a teenager. So, I mean, you look at the beach now and they made that little splash pad. They turned it into a nice family sort of oriented area. People want to go there.
Yeah.
It's very, very different from what I remember. And it's great to see, but at the same time, it's so drastically different that
It's kind of weird.
yeah, it's very
it's a
weird,
shock,
especially
yeah.
from like when I graduated high school and had left Connecticut for a number of years and then came back. So to be gone roughly probably like 10 years and then come back to Norwalk and see how much it changed after that, not just visiting wise, but living wise, makes it a really, really different place. But I still enjoy it. This is still my hometown and I won't ever give it up. So
Word.
Yeah. It's like you kind of, which I think most people growing up, they kind of say, well, I don't really like the way I grow up. It's this, it's too small. But as you get older, there's an appreciation that starts to come with that town. It's like you grew up in it, and you may not have enjoyed everything about it, but at the end of the day, that's where you grew up. So you have to have that place in your heart. But
you get a lot of people who say like, oh, well, if I leave this place, a lot of my problems aren't going to follow me. I can tell you firsthand, I've been all around the world now, and I came back here. Like, that should be first and foremost to tell you, your problems will go with you anywhere you go. Your life is going to be what you make it. So if you want a better situation, start making it here. You'll be fine. It'll just be in a comfortable environment as opposed to starting new somewhere else.
Right.
That's a great point to make, brother. So just continuing with your story now. Let's talk about high school now. So you talked about middle school. Let's make this quick transition to high school. And high school is where you really started taking ball more serious.
Yeah, that's where I'd say really my basketball sort of career really started to mold and take shape. Like I said, my freshman year, baseball kind of phased out. Moving into my sophomore year of high school, I knew basketball was going to be it. That's all I wanted to do. If it wasn't, doing my schoolwork, it was how can I make sure I get the good enough grades to play basketball and make sure I'm not going to fail off the team or have mom or dad mad enough to the point where they told me I couldn't play. So it really just came down to how many hours could I spend on the court and how many hours could I spend getting my work done to keep going. So my sophomore year, I was on the JV team, played JV pretty much the whole year. Towards the end of the year, in high school here, one of the great things is they'll bring some of the guys up to play varsity or at least sit the bench. And I was luckily one of those players. I was sitting on the end of the bench, kind of buying my time. And towards the end of the year, got a few minutes here and there, got my taste of it. And then junior year, that taste must have kind of taken over me because it was, I've got to come back and this has got to be me. Year round, I've got to be the guy. So I worked my tail off, did everything that I could to come back my junior year and earn a starting spot. And, my junior and senior year, I was starting, my junior year came very close to winning the state title. By many people who probably remember this back in 2001 area, we played Harding High School in the state semifinals at Trumbull High School. Sold out gym. I remember my parents having trouble getting into the gym itself. Wow. And, we had been beaten by Harding twice already in the regular season.
Okay.
We didn't really have an answer for them, and our coach just decided, we're going to flip the script on them. Instead of playing our regular way, we're going to do what they do to us. We're going to press them hard. We're going to play in your face, beat you up style basketball, and we're going to punch you in the mouth and see what you guys do. And they took it and neck and neck, back and forth, and then it really just boiled down to, in my mind, a terrible, terrible call. Our point guard got tripped up, and I think anybody who's in that gym will tell you he blatantly got tripped. But the referee saw it differently, called a travel instead, and from there our coach kind of flipped out. We got a tee, and Harding, as I say, the snowball effect had started.
I see it going downhill.
From there, we ended up losing by I think it was 3 pretty much at the end of the game with seconds left to go, and
that hurts.
Devastating. But I think most people would tell you if they were at that game, that was the state championship game right then and there. I think the state title game against Harding and whoever it was like a 40-point blowout. So if you were lucky enough to watch our game, it still hurts me. I have nightmares about it still. So it was good. And
those under 5 differential point games, those hurt.
Yeah.
It's like, dang, I was right there.
Yeah.
And this many years later, still hurts. So.
Do you remember any teammates from that team?
Oh man, I remember pretty much everybody. I mean, most of the local names that people would recognize is Joey Baker. He was a big-time scorer, and everybody knew him. He was talked about a lot in the state, averaging somewhere between like 25 and 30 points a game. My point guard was Donye Brown. Shout out to Donye.
Oh, shout out to Ye, man.
He was like playing with a young version of what it would be like playing with Magic Johnson. I mean, there were times I saw him do stuff in games and practice that literally I was amazed.
We still play with Ye to this day.
Oh, you still play with him?
Yeah, Ye still hoops.
I quite honestly remember a time, I don't remember what year it was, but we were in a game and somebody had knocked him backwards and he was like 4 or 5 feet from the hoop and he was literally falling to the ground on his ass and he shot the ball and went in. And it was just like, who does this sort of stuff, you know? As magical as a sort of scene playing with them, I mean, I'm sure from a crowd's perspective, it must have been even more. So I had those two. I played with my man Mike Watson. The two of us were sort of the twin towers at the time. You know, you didn't want to come into paint and see either one of us. We were either going to foul the crud out of you, or we were going to block your shot as far into the crowd as we could. You know, we had a young, fun, exciting team, and had a lot of great memories with those guys. They really, you know, we grew up together playing ball in all the rec leagues and stuff, knew each other since we were little, and it just kind of formed when we got to high school that we were set for destiny, and unfortunately we ran into Harding and kind of put a stop to it. So.
Man, I hate that. So one thing I wanted to ask too, because as a ball player, basketball is generally black guys.
Yeah.
Did you, as a white guy or a white ball player, did you get a different dynamic from people, or did they treat you differently, or did you find it like your path? I mean, it's obviously your path is a little bit different than a lot of ball players.
That's a great question. Like growing up, the majority of my teammates were all black. When I got into high school, quite honestly, I think in the 4 years I was there, I maybe had 4 or 5 white teammates. The rest of the time, it was all black guys. I mean, I never felt uncomfortable about it. To me, I mean, you probably hear this cliche all the time, like, I don't see color. I don't. Like, you're just another person walking the same earth as me, and it is what it is. You know, you have the same opportunity as I do, and we'll just make the best of it as we can. And, you know, I never really looked at it as, like, somebody looked at me differently or anything like that. I just went out and just played as hard as I could. And then the funny part is when I got to college, though, I walked in the locker room the first day that our coach called a meeting, and there's literally 2 black guys and everybody else on my team is white. I'd never seen something like that.
Really?
I literally walked in. I mean, I went to school in Virginia in the deep South, so it was just a different dynamic and culture anyway. But walking in that locker room, you know, I'm expecting to see at least like a 50-50 split. And I'm like, where are my teammates? This can't be the team, right? And some of the guys are looking at me like I'm just out of my mind. And I'm like, there can't be this many white guys on the same team playing at a college. Like, this doesn't work like that.
I get that,
But, you know, same sort of ordeal. Guys just wanted to play. And if you could play and go out there and prove that you were a hooper, nobody cared about your color. Just go out there and play.
That's it. All right, so moving it along, as far as talk about after high school now, like where did your life go once you graduated? Did you go straight to college afterwards?
Yeah,
did you
so it's kind of crazy because at the end of my high school career, I had one coach my freshman through junior year, and then he's a guy who had an unfortunate technical foul in the game against Harding, and unfortunately he kind of stepped away from coaching at the high school. So we had a new guy come in my senior year. Unfortunately, coupled with new coach, new schemes, couple of injuries, things like that, we ended up not having a great senior year, at least not what we expected. So my coach, my freshman through junior year, he was really hard on me. He was the type of guy who, you know, really didn't look at me as a player. I remember one time getting pulled out of a game and him yelling on our home court in front of everybody that I was only there to rebound, block shots, and play defense. Like, I wasn't allowed to score. If I scored, he usually took me out of the game. Like, it really was kind of a crazy high school experience. I mean, we had some great players, so I understood sort of where he was coming from. But at the same time, like, why do you want to hinder your players? If a guy's wide open and can make you 2 points, take the 2 points. Why kick it back out to one of your better scorers in hopes they're going to make the next shot? So, you know, he was the type of guy who, when he stepped away, was like, well, when you finish high school, that's going to be the end of your basketball career. But
it shows promise, or you may know the kid's family or whatever.
Politics.
But what do you think goes into those type of decisions, like to not play a kid or to hinder what they do while they're on the court?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm a coach myself too, and I like to think that I don't do that to players. You know,
Okay.
I try to play kids based off of their talent level, what they're going to give me, you know, what sort of dynamic they add to my team. Or, you know, you might not be my superstar, but if you're a great role player, I got to get you some minutes in there. You're going to help everybody else elevate their game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you never know what sort of spark a player is going to give depending on what their skill level might be. But, you know, I agree with what you said. I think a lot of it is just politics. A lot of these coaches know parents and stuff from outside of school or outside of the team framework, and they try to cater to them a little bit. They try to bend over backwards for them. You know, some of them I'd like to think they do it as an opportunity to give somebody, you know, a college look or something like that.
Right.
But, I mean, sadly, I think too many of them do it with ill intentions as opposed to, you know, a smart move, if you will. So,
I agree with that.
JUCO question?
Oh yeah, so after high school, you went to a junior college, right?
No, I went to
No?
D3 college, actually.
You went to D3,
so
okay.
My senior year of high school, I wasn't recruited by really anybody and didn't know of anybody who was looking for me to play for them. You know, I've been on AAU teams, been around the circuit. You know, at the time, it wasn't like it is now. There was no YouTube. There was no no grand AAU circuits where they're plugging your videos all over the place sort of thing.
No overtime,
You know, if you wanted to go get recruited like that, you had to go make your own homemade highlight tapes, send them to all these schools and hope that they watched them.
Yeah.
That's another dynamic, which is again different than Jarrell, Lonnie, and T-Mac, because they all came up in the YouTube era, social media era. Like you didn't.
Unfortunately, I missed that. That was a little after my time. So, you know, a lot of it was we had to go do our own legwork. I remember my mom being on the phone with certain colleges and asking, you know, hey, how do we get in touch with the basketball coach? How can we talk to him about my son playing? I remember reaching out to coaches I knew and people I could talk to in schools I was interested with, and just kind of being like, hey, you guys have a big guy on your team? Is there interest for one? Is there a chance to walk on? Pretty much any way, shape, or form I could try to get on to a college basketball team, I was ready to do it. And luckily, my coach who was there my senior year in high school, he had a connect down in Southern Virginia, in Emory, Virginia, actually. It's about 20 miles from the border of Tennessee, so it's way, way out there. And coach was like, hey, you know, I could talk to him and see about getting you a look. Would you be interested? And I said, you know what? I don't know if I want to go that far, but give him a call. Let's talk this out and see what happens. Okay. And he ended up giving me a call, talked to me on the phone a little bit, talked like probably 1 or 2 weeks, and kind of started to feel comfortable with him. And he said, you know, why don't you come down and check out the school? You know, it's really kind of after the visiting period and everything, but just come and see what you think. We'll have you talk to the coach. We'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. And I went down on my recruiting visit. It was probably like a week before finals, so a lot of the guys weren't on campus anymore, were really heavy in studying and all that. So was kind of just left to my own accord, really just walking around campus, seeing what's going on. Super, super small. Like, when I say complete opposite of Norwalk, complete opposite of Norwalk. Like, nothing but cow fields surrounding the school. Like, just little tiny quaint. The campus itself was maybe a mile across at best, and I mean, super small. Like maybe 1,000 kids in the campus itself altogether. And I graduated with almost 900 from Norwalk High. So you got to imagine going from my class being 1,000 people to the school being 1,000 people was very different. And you know, my recruiting visit, I was there, ended up playing pickup with like 4 guys who were still available, ready to play. And they were all rising juniors and seniors, which was cool that they were willing to come and play with me, some, you know, little white guy from Norwalk, Connecticut, on a recruiting visit last minute. And I remember playing, and one of the guys who was a rising senior, he took exception to how I was playing. Like, I only know one way to play. You got to play as hard as you can all the time and get what's yours. You know? And he took exception to it, didn't really like it, so played a little more physical and started giving it back to him. And next thing I know, he took a punch at me. So when he swung at me, I swung back at him, and sure enough, the two of us are ready to dust it up right there on the court. The door to the gym flies open. And you got to imagine, my coach for college is like maybe 6 feet tall on a good day. And he's an ex-Army Ranger, super intense, like the type of guy you're not going to mess with just looking at him. So you can imagine what happened when he threw the door open and yells at me and is like, "You, my office now." And I'm like, I'm just playing ball.
Yeah.
Like, all right,
Yeah.
well, I probably just ruined this recruiting trip. Like, back to the drawing board. Next 5 minutes were probably the longest 5 minutes of my entire life. I sat in the office directly across from my coach, and he stared a hole right through me. Didn't say a word, literally for 5 minutes.
Wow.
Here I am. I don't know what to say back to him. How do I start this conversation?
Correct.
Sorry, I almost just beat up one of your players, coach. My bad. Like, I hope you still want me. So after like 5 minutes, literally the coach was like, "I like your fire, son." And I literally turned around, like looked in the hallway, thinking there's got to be somebody else he's talking to. Like,
Yeah.
nah, this ain't me.
Yeah.
Nobody's in the hallway. So
Okay.
of course he's talking to me. He's like, "Is that how you play all the time?" Yeah, coach, I only know one way, man. Like, we're the beasts of the East. Like, you know, Big East was my favorite college conference at the time. You know, it was all about, you know, being a big, aggressive guy, beating up on people. And that's sort of how I took my game everywhere I went. And he was like, "Is this how you play all the time? If so, there's a good chance you could play for me next year. But we got to tone your temper down a little bit." And I just told him, you know, look, I'm not the type who's going to go start a fight, but I'm going to finish one. If a guy wants to dust it up, let's go ahead. I'm not scared of confrontation. I'll walk right into it. So it is what it is. And, you know, again, just kind of talk through some things. And he was like, you know, if you play like this all the time, there's a good chance if you come here next year, you'll start as a freshman. Now, out of all the coaches I had talked to and everything, that's the first coach who had really given me a solid, like, if you come here, we're going to get you in as long as you do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And I remember leaving that weekend, and in my mind was like, hell no, I'm not going here. It's way out in the country. It's so far away, so small. Like, I'm good. I don't need that. Then as I started boiling down college choices, it really was like, all right, I want to go and play. I don't want to go sit behind somebody. I don't want to have to work my way up the ladder behind 2, 3, 4 other guys and hope I'll get to play by senior year. I want an opportunity. Where can I go? And I started weighing out, you know, all the opportunities that were in front of me and what was going to be the best. And, you know, it was one of those things that was like, maybe I need to get out of Norwalk for a while. Maybe I should go somewhere else and see what life is like. And it just, you know, kind of determined that that's where it needed to go. So sure enough, that summer packed up and shipped off to nowhere land, Virginia. And, you know, the college career took place. And that's really where I would say my basketball career really started to take off and really make some noise. So
So talk about your highs briefly, because we're running out of time, but your highs in that college years. Like, what was,
man, college was great. I ended up breaking the school's block shot record for a career. I had the second and third most in a single season. When I did graduate, I was top 5 in rebounding in school history. I think now I've actually been pushed out of the top 5 with a couple of our younger guys who've came up and broke some records. But,
it happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're there for. They're meant to be broken. So, and I've been lucky enough to meet those guys. So, you know, to see some guys that kind of took the same route I went has been really good. But
is this your jersey from this college?
No, this is actually one of my jerseys from when I was playing overseas. I was lucky enough to go and play in 4 countries after I got out of school. I played in Mexico for a little bit. I played in Peru. And I took a real short stint in Ecuador. And then my last season was in Bolivia, which is where the jersey's from.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been around a little bit.
So to that transition from college to overseas, was it straight to overseas, or did you
Not
do
at all. I actually had thought I was done playing ball. Like, I pretty much came out of college and said, all right, well, that's it. What's next? Like, playing pro, like, it was on my mind, but it never really was something I had thought was really going to come to fruition, you know?
Gotcha.
So I was looking for a job. I was lucky enough to get hired by a place called Velocity Sports Performance in Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay.
And basically, we trained athletes how to get better. It would be similar. It's like a Blue Streak performance down the road here. So we trained athletes how to run faster, jump higher, change direction, like, you know, your favorite athletes and all that.
Yeah.
And it was great. I ended up being pretty much our basketball coach there. So any guy who was coming in looking for, you know, college help, pro help, whatever it may be, I was the guy. And ended up playing against some guys who were trying to go D1 colleges and whatnot. And our athlete recruiter, quite frankly, came in one day and was like, why the hell are you my coach and you're not training here? And, you know, kind of told him my story and how I wasn't really recruited, didn't really look to go after college to go play and all this. And he kind of said, let's make this happen if you're interested. And I was, and you know, he did a little bit of networking for me and helped me out, but quite honestly, he wasn't even the one that got me involved in it. The place ended up closing down, and so we kind of lost touch with a lot of guys, and I didn't get sort of what I thought was on the way.
Right.
But I was a personal trainer too, so I got into doing one-on-one personal training, and a guy that I worked with, shout out to my boy Darnell, he ended up going to Peru, and he was actually about to not continue trying to go overseas because it was real shaky getting contracts and this, you know, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, when he finally went, he said that one of the talks that we had together was what kind of kept him positive and going, and it was basically me just telling him that I wish I would have wanted to keep playing. And so when he got the contract, he called me up that afternoon and was like, Will, since you helped me out, I'm going to help you out. He's like, this guy Al's going to send you a text or call you in a little while. Just talk to him and see what's good. So sure enough, like 20 minutes later, I got a storybook long text message from this coach of the Metropolitan All-Stars, which is a semi-pro team in DC.
Okay.
And the coach was just like, hey, you know, I talked with Darnell. He told me about you, said that you're a pretty good player, and we're getting ready to have our tryouts. I want to personally invite you to come try out for the team and see what happens.
Word.
So,
Word.
you know, this is in DC, Chocolate City. So
Yeah.
going back to sort of the race thing, I walk into a gym for tryouts, and there's easily 50, 60 guys there. I'm the only white guy in the gym.
Wow.
And I specifically remember a guy coming up to me and asked me why I was there, and it's like, I'm here like everybody else is. I'm ready to hoop. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to try to take your spot.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, well, you know you can't raise the team's GPA no more, right? And to me, it was like, first off, I was never that guy who was raising the team's GPA for anything. You know, I made it by, but I was never that guy.
Yeah.
So, you know, I kind of was like, I'm going to go after this dude specifically.
Yeah.
Like, he's got to be
Yeah.
my target.
Yeah.
And the owner of the team, actually, he ended up coming over to me like 5 minutes later, was like, go get him.
Yeah.
And so like the first drill that we did was basically a one-on-one full court drill, and I made sure I went and lined up right behind this guy talking all this craziness, and got the ball, and very first play down court, I ended up making a nice little move and blew by him, ended up dunking it, and he had to come back the other way. So as he's trying to attack me, I ended up picking his pocket, and literally the gym was silent. Guy gets the ball again, tries to come after me again. I don't remember if I took the ball from him or he ended up kicking it out of bounds, whatever it was, something where he ended up looking stupid. And literally the coach was like, all right, that's enough, done. Like, you two off. And you heard a couple of the guys in line all of a sudden were like, I think we should watch out for the white guy. I think he could play. And the owner pretty much came up to me and was like, if you keep playing like this, you have a spot on this team. I don't care what anybody says.
Word.
And at the end of the
That's
night,
what it's about.
Yeah.
end of the night, that was it. Next thing I know, I was playing semi-pro ball for the Metropolitan All-Stars, and you know, then the overseas life came from there. So
That's
Okay.
Good, man. That's good. So, well, let's talk about like.
Yeah. You have 4 countries that you played in. Which was your favorite?
oh man, I don't know which one was my favorite because all of them were so many different experiences and so drastically different from each other. So
I can see that.
when
Yeah.
I was in Mexico, they have essentially 2 different pro leagues. They have what we would consider the NBA, which is, I think they call it the LNBP if I'm not mistaken, and then they also have like the pro tour circuit. So there's actually a show on HBO, I think it was called The Last Shot, like a year or 2 ago, and
I
they followed
watched
this
that.
tournament. Like it's basically traveling players all over the country. You can find a tournament pretty much every day, and guys will just pay you money and crazy amounts of it to just play. And if you win these tournaments, you win a ton of money too. So, you know, I was lucky enough to be invited to come down there and play. I had a couple of my teammates from the Metropolitan All-Stars with me, a couple other guys I met from around the country that were really, really great players, and went down there. We played in the second biggest tournament that Mexico holds. They have one in Mexico City, which is the biggest, and then the second one they hold in a town called Pinotepa, Mexico, which is roughly an hour south of Acapulco. So, you know, you got to imagine it's like 120 something degrees outside. You playing in an old bullfighting ring. Like, they set up an old street ball court essentially in the middle of this bullfighting ring.
Wow.
Have a carnival type atmosphere around it, and there's like 100,000 people. Like, your games didn't start until 8 o'clock at night, because it was so hot you couldn't play outside. You'd literally play from 8 o'clock at night till 3, 4 in the morning, and the place stayed packed all night. Vibes never changed. It was crazy.
That sounds like an experience,
one of the
man.
wildest atmospheres I've ever been in, and we were the quote unquote local teams. So we were like a bunch of misfits. They kind of all just pieced together. It was like, you guys are in this tournament. Good luck. And you know, the rules in Mexico is if you're there for like 6 months, you're considered a Mexican national all of a sudden. Like you're good. You don't need no new paperwork or anything like that. You're essentially a resident there.
Okay.
So a lot of American guys will go down there and play for a couple of months on this circuit until they could technically become Mexican residents to play as a nationalist. You get a lot of these guys who go and they'll form, they call them mercenary teams. And it's basically all the American guys who are now considered Mexican all playing on these teams together in these tournaments. So I remember going to this Pinatepa tournament, and we were lucky enough to win it. But the team we played against in the finals was literally 12 American guys, and all of them had played D1 basketball. So like the guy I was matched up with in particular had played for Bobby Knight at Texas Tech. And the guy was talking all this craziness about how many of these guys have played D2, D3, JUCO ball, whatever, and now they're down here thinking they can make a career for themselves. I played for Bobby Knight, like, you know, I'm the man sort of thing. Killed him in the finals. Like, I don't think he scored more than 4 points, had maybe 3 rebounds. Like, just an awful performance by this guy. And at the end, usually I'm a humble guy, but I had to go up to him and be like, remember how you were talking all that trash about D3 guys? I'm one of them. So you can take Bobby Knight and that name and everything and just keep it moving. And I mean, his own team was clowning him and everything. It was great to kind of put that in his face.
What does that mean? That means nothing. You see Kawhi over here, number 15 pick, now is arguably the second best player in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it all the time. I was just having this conversation with my friend the other day. It's like, you look at the Rucker League and things like that, these street ball leagues that have become big, you know, shows. You're getting a guy who's busting groceries during the day to come out and bust an NBA player's ass that night. And I mean, these guys, for one reason or another, don't get the opportunity to get to the league. And, you know, for whatever reason it may be, it is what it is. But some of these guys can still hoop. They just haven't been seen, they haven't been looked at, whatever it may be. So I don't care where you've been, what you've done. If you can play ball, you can play ball. It doesn't matter who your coaches have been or anything.
Look at that Big 3 league that's out there. You see got these old ball players that Gilbert Arenas, I think, just hits literally 7 threes, I think, last night. Or the
last night.
I'm like, yo, this dude can still ball. You know? So, real quick, and to keep it moving, how are we feel with battery stuff? You good?
Yeah, we great.
Okay, good. That's all I'm worried about. Playing overseas, one obstacle a lot of people don't look at is language.
Oh yeah.
How do you deal with language barriers or playing with teammates that don't speak your language?
Man, it was tough. Like Mexico wasn't
Especially
as
basketball's
bad.
such a communicator.
Basketball is its own language, so the game itself is easily translated. It's outside of the game, so like you can learn how to say left, right, screen here, you know, all the terms of the game pretty quickly. Like I feel like I picked that up within the first week that I was in Mexico. And then, I mean, I was an ignorant dude in Mexico. There were a lot of Americans around, a lot of people speaking English. So quite frankly, in my mind, it was like, I don't need to learn Spanish. I'll just get by. There's somebody who can help me translate if I need to. So I just kind of floated my way through and did as best as I could while I was in Mexico. And then when I got to Peru, that's when things changed. I was on tour with my team, the Metropolitan All-Stars, for 30 days. And then I was the first one signed off the tour. So all of a sudden it was, you're not going home. You're staying. Everybody else is going home today. And that's when you realize, like, all right, now I don't have anybody. I don't know anybody who speaks English around here. I luckily ended up getting another teammate signed like the next day who was one of my American teammates. So we could relate to each other and interact and talk and whatnot. But otherwise, fish out of water. You know, I'm walking through the town. I don't even know how to ask for food. Like, you know, stereotypical. I knew how to ask where the bathroom was. I knew how to ask for a beer or like some food. But outside of that, I couldn't tell you anything.
So what'd you do?
You know, I was lucky enough that the place they put us up in was a hostel, and the guy who pretty much ran the hostel spoke English. So in my mind there, it was, I'm going to be here for a minimum 10 months, hopefully longer. If this is the case, I got to start learning. So it started with him, and I would every day try to learn 3 new words that I could consistently use, whether it was, you know, a piece of food or, you know, how do I get to this street? Any sort of thing I could start piecing together to make words and sentences that were legit. So it started with that, and I started to slowly get it. And Right outside of our apartment building, there was a little tiny corner store, and the old lady who worked there, same thing. I was like, I got to pick up 3 new words every day. So every time I went to the store, I mean, you went way more than you would think you needed to.
Yeah.
And I would just learn from her. You know, her and her grandchild used to be there during the day, and I would just try to listen to her and pay attention. And then, quite honestly, one thing that helped me out a lot was watching cartoons. Like, you wouldn't think so, but you'd watch the subtitles, you know, and the English subtitles are coming up, but the voices are in Spanish. Where you start to match them up, and eventually you start learning more and more and more. So
that's what human nature is, man. We adjust. We kind of, I mean, if you put something like it's a baby. Like, you wonder how babies are able to pick up language. You're just in it. You absorb it. You hear it every day. And you start to pick it up. So I think, and that's the best way to learn a language, in my opinion. Just kind of just listen to it, putting 2 and 2 together, matching words with phrases. It works. But that's amazing, man. And you did it.
It took a while, and by no means am I fluent in speaking Spanish at all, but I mean, I know enough to get by. I understand a lot more than I can speak, but it's enough that if I needed to now, I can definitely, you know, use that to my advantage. So.
That's good, yeah.
Gotcha.
That's good, bro. So, I mean, thank you for everything that you've shared so far. We're gonna just end with some closing statements.
Sure.
Do you have any closing statements or questions or anything?
Do you have anything that you want to share that we haven't touched on?
I mean, I was my own agent. That's probably one of the more unique things to myself.
Let's get into that right there.
You know, a lot of players go the agent route, and they try to find somebody who's going to essentially do all the legwork for them. They're going to go find a league. They're going to find a team. They're going to find a coach or somebody to get them put on. And that's not the route that I went at all. I studied sports management as my major in college, and that's what I graduated with. I never wanted to become a sports agent or anything like that, so I didn't want to go get the law degree to go behind it or follow up on all that. Quite honestly, in my mind, it was like, I want to go be a sports director at a community center or an athletic director at a high school, something like that. I wanted to give back to kids. That was something I always wanted to do. I had some really great role models growing up myself, so I kind of wanted to give that sort of thing back to somebody else, so when they grow up, they in turn will pay it forward. So,
well, so you said you're an agent, so explain how you actually became an agent and what did that entail?
I mean, really, all it did was I needed to go fight for myself. If I wanted to go make a contract, I needed to go contact coaches. I needed to go contact leagues. I needed to go find open spots. I got to create my own highlight tapes. I've got to create, you know, my own, they call them your CV. It's almost like a resume for a job, but it's all just your basketball, you know, highlights, where you've played, your stats, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I did all that and would be pushing them out. I mean, I was all over Facebook. I was searching the internet, you know, up and down. I'm in private groups this, friends of that, you know, guys who knowingly were shady online, and people would tell you that, contacting them and seeing what was, you know, what opportunities were around. And, you know, get caught up sometimes and you get scammed, but luckily for myself, I'd like to think of myself as a pretty smart guy, so I really have not been scammed. And of course, I know a lot of guys who have put up money to go to these tryouts, or hey, if you pay me this amount of money, we're gonna have a contract for you within a month, and this sort of stuff, and these guys never pan out. So in my mind, it was, well, I can brag about myself just as good as somebody else can, so if I don't want to pay somebody to do this, just do it yourself.
Right.
And luckily enough, I had some friends who went the law path with their college degree, so I basically would negotiate my contracts. The teams would draw up their contracts and send them to me. Not being, you know, fluent in Spanish, I would send them to my friends who were lawyers and bilingual. They would read them, you know, here's what's supposed to be in here. Is everything there? Yeah, this looks good. Go ahead, send it back to them, signed, you're good. If not, they say, you know, this isn't worded correctly, you got to get this changed. And if that was the case, you know, I'd go back to the teams, make sure changes were made before I officially signed the contract to go. So it was very different. It was tough, and what made it harder was while you're playing, you're trying to do this at the same time. So you're almost splitting your time 50-50. You're playing at practice, trying to take care of your body, playing your games, all that stuff, but you're also worried about your next contract. You know, overseas life is not as much like the NBA. NBA is going to sign you for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Overseas, you're getting a 1-year contract. You'll be lucky if they bring you back the next year. So you're constantly trying to find the next move, and where's the next country? Where's the next better league? Where can I make moves to make myself in a better position? So
Okay.
it was tough, but then you get some really great positive sort of sides of things. So when I was in Ecuador, that worked out really, really great. The guys that I had to deal with were really easy to work with. They stayed on top of their side of stuff as, team management and owners. I was pretty good about staying on top of my stuff as a player and doing everything I needed to do, so we had no sort of issues. Then I had a flip side, like with Bolivia. Those guys tried not to pay us towards the end of the season, and in our contract, we had our dates of when we're supposed to be paid and all this.
Yeah.
If they didn't pay us, we essentially were released from the team. Now, the other two American teammates that I had, they went the agent route. Their agents could not help them from America to call and be like, guys, you got to pay my guy.
Right.
It was just like, well, you're down there already. They should be paying you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they're not.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? Well, I don't know. Good luck.
Yeah.
What do you mean good luck? If I'm
That's-
paying you,
that's-
you have to help me get this money back.
course.
Yeah.
And, I went the complete opposite route. I told all my two American teammates, we're going to have to do some stuff that you might not want to do. We're going to have to be embarrassing of ourselves. We're going to have to embarrass the team a little bit, and we'll shake it out and see what happens. But you have to not be scared to say, I'm not going to play. And unfortunately, too many of these teams, especially in South America, because it's really kind of a foot in the door for a lot of these players, they take advantage of that. They know you just want to play. They know you want to get to the next opportunity. So you sitting out a game, you're hurting yourself. So a lot of these players aren't willing to risk that sort of thing. I'm the opposite. I'd rather, live up to my morals and get what I'm supposed to get and stay by my principles than say, well, I'll just play because the next step might be better. So
There may not be a next step.
and
Right,
that's exactly
right.
it.
Yeah.
And so, our team management came to us and basically told us they weren't going to pay us. And I showed up to practice and I convinced my other teammates to show up with no basketball stuff. So we didn't have any sneakers on because they were going to try to force us to play. We showed up in literally clothes like we were going to go to the club. And they were like, what are you guys doing? And flat out told them, I'm not playing. If you want me to play, I need my money.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, then
We're not playing.
you can send me
Simple.
home. That's your other option. Either pay me or send me back to America. Plain and simple. And they fought it. They fought for a whole another week. And technically we were released by the team. I could have gone and tried to find another team to pick me up. I could have flown home, a whole bunch of different options. And I decided to say, we're going to keep fighting. We want to play for this team. We want to finish the season out. So we literally caused a big enough stink to where our last road game, they were like, all right, you have to come on the road trip and we'll get you paid. And I remember telling them, I'm not going to the bus station. You won't see me there unless my money's in hand. And they were like, well, you have to come to the road game. When we get to this other city, we'll have your money. And I hesitated, and last minute I was like, all right, you know what, I'll come. But I'm going to keep my gym bag zipped up. No sneakers are coming out. My jersey's not getting pulled out. Nothing. I will be in street clothes until every dime is in my hand. So sure enough, literally minutes before the game is supposed to start, somebody from the team comes running in and is like, we have your money. Where is it? The other administrator got it. Go get it. So they didn't know how far I was willing to push it. And I literally waited until I'd say 2 minutes before the game as the guy comes running back up with my money. And I was like, let me count it. And he literally didn't want to because he was like, I'm going to hand you a couple grand in your hand right here in front of a sold out crowd. This is not a smart idea. I was like, I don't care. Give it to me. So I counted out my money right there on the sideline, and I had made friends with another American guy who I trusted, and I gave him my money and was like, you hold it. So he ended up holding on for me for the game, but I finally went and got changed to play. And I think I came out to warm up with maybe a minute and change on the clock. But it was on them, Hey, you wanted me to play, you should have paid me.
This
For
is
sure.
a great point to make, and we're going to wrap up after this because this time is going. But it's a great point to make because you see what goes into everybody focuses on what happens in college stuff, but a lot of people don't know what happens for the athletes that go overseas. And how they try to gyp you and how they take advantage of those because they know that's literally all the people are going overseas for. They're just to try to use it as to get better, number one, to get footage, and then just to get exposure, and then try to sign on to maybe a G League team or whatever. But so that's a great insight point that you brought to us today. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Will.
It's definitely a hit and miss sort of business when you go overseas. There's a lot of really great highs, but there's definitely a lot of lows that you have to deal with too. And You know, I give credit to anybody who could live that lifestyle. It's very, very hard to be somewhere in another country by yourself, essentially, and trying to do the right thing to move up in your basketball career. You're going to have to second guess it.
It's tough being away from your family, too, right? I didn't
Tremendously,
talk about that.
Tremendously so. Family and friends, I mean, I probably lost friends from being overseas, you know, not being able to talk to them, not communicating. Quite frankly, some of them being jealous of the fact that you continued on to do this. Like, you know, some of my college teammates, you know, we were great friends, best of best friends, you know, talking to each other every single day, even after we had left school and were miles apart. All of a sudden, I went overseas and it was like, oh, now we're not cool anymore? Like, we can't talk? And I mean, even to this day, some of them I probably still haven't touched base with, and I couldn't tell you why. In my mind, I'd like to think there's more reason to it, but, you know, as they say, jealous ones envy. You know, if you're going to follow your dreams and do what you want to do, there's going to be some people who don't like what you're doing. I mean, I have family members who quite honestly were against me going overseas and saying that it was about time for me to grow up. And
well, see, and I'm mad that we're just talking about this now because I'm trying to wrap up, but I can't real quick because we haven't touched on that. So, just real quick, did people really try to fight you from going overseas, like your parents and?
I mean, I got to give it to my parents. My mom and dad have been more supportive than I could possibly ask for. Like,
shout out mom and dad.
My mom, my dad, my brothers, and my sister are quite frankly the best support system you could have. They encouraged me all the way through. I mean, my mom encourages me to this day, even to the point where I'm like, Mom, I don't even want to play anymore. And she's like, well, if you wanted to drop everything right now and get back to it, we'll help you. We'll support you. So, I mean, that's what sort of team I have behind me. And unfortunately, some of our extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, things like that, who don't know the hard work that I've put in every single day. And they look at it more of like, well, you're just playing a kid's game. Well, this kid's game is my life. This kid's game has gotten me more places than I could have ever asked for. It's given me more opportunity than anything I could have ever expected. I mean, to the point that I couldn't walk away from just being a player. I even coached for years. I still coach, and I can't get away from the game. It's given me too much to say, I'll step away from it. And it's tough having family members, you know, talking to your parents and saying, why are you still letting him do this? You know, you should make him realize it's time to grow up. It's not, you know, time. He's got a college degree. There's no more time to play games. It's time to go and be an adult. And it's like, I'm being an adult. But I'm doing this my way.
What is being an adult?
Exactly.
You know? Like,
everybody's interpretation is that's different.
There's people who develop video games for a living who are grown adults.
There's people who test video games as grown adults for their life. Like, I mean, I would hope that they don't have people balking at them and saying, well, this isn't a career style that you should have. I mean, let's face it, look at how much video games have grown probably in just your day and age. I remember when video games were Atari. Like, they've grown tremendously in my time. So it's crazy to see. And I'm sure that those guys all were ridiculed and made fun of, but look at where they've got to now. And in my mind, that's sort of, I guess, what you could say I went through was, you know, you can tell me no, I don't care. This is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it.
And that's one thing I kind of want to leave off with this whole podcast, because it's like, first of all, because we leave a message for people watching. First of all, if you are involved in the game, even if you don't actually become an athlete, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a failure. Like, you can use that game to become a coach, or
an agent,
or a personal trainer for that sport. Our previous guest, Ronnie, who was won the baseball world. He became a personal trainer for people who are trying to get back into baseball. Or if not like people getting into the sport, just like people who are just trying to play the game, but just want to get more in shape to play, maybe a rec league, women. Like, there's a lot of stuff that people he works out. So you don't have to necessarily not be playing the game for you to consider it a failure, because you can make a livelihood from that sport. You know what I mean? So
plenty of opportunity outside of being just a player. So much opportunity.
Shabbat, who is going to be a guest upcoming soon, a recruiter. I believe Shabbat is a recruiter. Where he works out contracts and makes sure these athletes are put in the proper situations, so you know they have a good foundation when they get started on their sporting career. So there's so many avenues you can take with this. So I really appreciate Will for coming out and telling us about his version of growing up in Norwalk and how, you know, because he took a different route than other people, which is fine. Everybody has their own route, but it matters where you end up.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. And I
Just gotta follow your dreams and
That's it, man.
live your life, make them happen. If you don't want to make your dreams your reality, then do you. But my life's always been, if I'm gonna dream it, I want it to be real. So
you got one life to live, man. Just live it.
Yeah.
Just live it. And you got any last thoughts, C? Anything you want to leave out?
Nah.
First of all, I want to thank CJ for helping me out today, providing his brief insight. Anything?
Yeah, honestly, I just want to big you up on being your own agent, man. That's
that,
a
man.
big
Thank
deal right there, you know.
Hey,
Like
not
to
easy, that's
to
for sure.
play and to be your agent. Yeah, it's like a lot of people just can't handle that. They can't handle that pressure. People can't even handle owning a business, you know. And here you are, you own a business, which is yourself, and you're running it, and it's like you're working for yourself.
That's literally
Literally,
all it was. And probably the hardest thing to do, especially like I was saying earlier on, I try to be humble. It's hard to brag about yourself when you're trying to be a humble person.
Yeah.
And essentially being an agent, you have to brag. And you have to try to big yourself up and make yourself almost larger than life. And like I said, that's hard for me to do. I know a lot of other people who very simply can say, oh, I'm the shit, and make themselves really big. I'm the opposite. I'd rather be humble and let somebody else tell my story and tell me how great I am.
I will say this though, man. Sometimes too, because there's being humble, but then there's also times you have to remind yourself who you are and what you've accomplished, because you've been through things that maybe somebody else would have folded under, So there's always that balance that I got to know who the hell I am.
And that's why I'm so appreciative you guys invited me out for this today, to be able to spread, my story and let people know that there's not one way to make it. You could go, a roundabout way. It might not be the easiest, but you can make your own way as long as you kind of push yourself to get there. So.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Definitely will.
Guys, I
It's
really
great meeting you,
appreciate
man. I think we might need a part 2 for that agent talk,
Hey,
man.
I'd be happy to come back another time. So just let me know, and I'll come back and visit Light Up Sports whenever you guys want me to.
Let's do it.
This is the fifth episode of Light Up Sports?
Fourth, I think.
Fourth episode of Light Up Sports. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it.
Peace.